Hello, BookTube. I have an am reading for you to give you a sample of the books that I'll be reading this weekend, starting with these two ancient things, these little paperbacks. Uh, you can see, there we go. They're collections of essays by Alexander Wolcott. The first one is Long, Long Ago, and the other one is While Rome Burns. He was a long time ago, he was a very famous and well-read public intellectual in America. Wrote on all sorts of subjects. Could reliably be entertaining. He was reliably entertaining. His columns and whatnot. They're all gone now. They're completely gone. In long, long ago, some of the subject matter, some of the people that he profiles, some of the stories that he mentions, the historically inclined among you might know. But While Rome Burns and even a lot of Long, Long Ago, most of it is so incredibly dated. You would need an annotated edition to really get the context of what he's talking about, and there ought to be one because he's really, really good. And I'll be rereading both of these from front to back, and I think a few other things as well because I have a friend who's been commissioned to write a long piece on Alexander Wolcott, and he was kind of hoping that I would that I would be available on the other end of the email to help him out, and of course I am in any circumstance when that's necessary. So I want the set fresh in my mind. And then there's this thing. I found it at the Brattle, and my jaw dropped open. It's look at the size of this thing. It's 1812 by Paul Britton Austin in this weird Green Hill Books paperback. And it's 3 books in one. 1812, The March on Moscow, 1812, Napoleon in Moscow, and 1812, The Great Retreat. And I have no idea how, but I never knew about any of those 3 books and have never read this collection. And it looks fantastic. It's each book is followed by an enormous note section that seems to be very argumentative. So I'll be reading that. Because I have a fatal attraction to the pestiferous little Corsican. There's this thing, The Three Battles of One Night. This is by Mark Bowden, the author of Black Hawk Down. This is a collection of long paid journalism pieces of his that I read originally when it came out in hardcover, and also I read almost all of the pieces in their original publication. He's an author, if you really like, what's now odiously known as creative nonfiction, you don't miss anything that he does. So, but it doesn't matter. I happily reread them. It's been a while. And then something we've seen on this channel not once but twice. This is the 3rd time and will probably be the last time. The Spartan Dagger by Nicholas Guild. It's coming out at the very end of the year. So I want to read it. There's a certain way in which reading it is a trifle pointless. The Steve Reed's annual year's best historical fiction list has already come out. Now that might be unfair, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I didn't get this book until after that list was out, and it can't go on 2017's list, no matter how good it is. So it's kind of repercussion-free reading, but I want to read it anyway. So, although I showed it to a friend of mine. I have a friend who is a fairly well-known classicist, and I showed the book to him via Skype. And the very first thing he said is, "That Spartan has been shopping elsewhere for his helmet." I take to mean that some tiny abstruse detail of the helmet is not correct. And then there's this thing. This is Back Blast by Mark Greaney, who's he got a major leg up in his writing career by being the guy who was tapped to finish to keep writing Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan novels, first with Clancy and then after Clancy went to hell. And the whole time that he was doing that, he was also writing a series of his own called The Gray Man, in which there's an operative overseas. He's one of the most effective and highly placed action-oriented killer spies that the American intelligence agency employs. And then all of a sudden, he discovers, just barely surviving, that his bosses in the spook business back in America have declared him not only not an asset anymore, but an enemy, someone to be liquidated. And so he abandons his old identity and becomes someone called the Gray Man, who's an assassin for hire. And in this book, he comes back to America. He confronts the problem, the thing that derailed his life. And I read a little bit of it eons ago when I got the advanced copy, I think, or maybe the hardcover. I read a little bit of it, and it was one of those things where I read a little bit of it, thought it was kind of good, but, nothing to write home about, and there was probably, a Montaigne biography waiting for me, so I just sort of dropped it and never went back to it. And over the months, I kept thinking, long after the book had disappeared from Hyde Cottage, I kept thinking, it's kind of tangy. That was really good. What was that book again? Where was that from? So I was very happy to get the paperback. I will consume it this time. And then the last thing is something I found at the Brattle. It's this lovely hardcover of Dune Messiah by Frank Herbert. This is his first sequel to Dune. When Dune, the hubbub was at its peak, everybody thought, wow, this is an amazing book. And then this thing appeared in magazines. I believe it was serialized in a magazine, and the reaction was quite different. Nobody liked it, including me. And I've read it a few times since then, and each time my estimation of it has gone up. Frank Herbert never actually wrote an unintelligent line of prose in his entire life. So if he wrote a novel, if he wrote a novel and signed his name to it, that novel is going to be worth your time to read. And if you read it and you think it wasn't, then you need to read it again. It's as simple as that. There aren't many authors like that. He's one of them. And I haven't reread Dune Messiah. You've got Dune, which is this great book, and then you've got Dune Messiah, which everybody considers a failure, and then you have Children of Dune, which is a great book, and in my opinion, then you have the best book in the series, God Emperor of Dune. And although it's an embattled opinion and not many science fiction fans share it with me, I think that everything, the Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Chapter House Dune, and Heretics of Dune are all great books. I think they're all fantastic. In fact, I think the later two do some things that that even an author of Frank Herbert's talent could only do with trial and error, with time. I think there are things happening in those books on the rhetorical level, on the prose level, that don't happen, even in Dune. But that's been the sense of the landscape, that you have, ping, 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 even for me. And so this is going to be a great, I haven't reread Dune Messiah in so long. This is going to be a great chance to go. I'm just going to clear the decks, take calming inner breath, and read the thing as a book. And the fact that it's in this nice, big, lovely hardcover will actually mentally help me do that. I will just view it as a Frank Herbert novel, and let it go at that, and see. It's definitely in a different register. It's in a different tone than, it's not epic, like all the other books. All the other books are epic, but this one is not. And maybe that's what threw critics. Maybe that's what threw me. So I'm looking forward to giving it another try. And there you go. That is my reading for this weekend, aside from work-related stuff. And as usual, in the comments field, I'd love to hear what you're reading. And I'll see you soon, book 2. Thank you.